Monday.
You needed the better.
Yeah.
You should just come back to the January meeting and, you know.
I want to get rid of that.
I'm not gonna do
Yeah.
they can have that.
Yeah. All right. Good morning, everybody. Why don't we quickly go around the room and introduce ourselves and figure who do we have online? No, before we do that, Mac is online. Any other board members? No other board members, just Mac. Okay, great. Ron, let's start with you.
Roger Burley, public member from Cliff Island.
Also, Commissioner in the Fishing Wildlife. Jody Sapphire, serving as proxy for Commissioner Zale today.
Pat Kelleher, Chair, and Commissioner DMR.
Laura Graham, Director, LMF.
Jim Norris.
Short
Board member
time,
from
lame,
Windsor.
short time lame duck, last meeting board member.
That's Filler, public member, Birmingham.
Great. Mac, you want to introduce yourself?
Mac Hunter, public member from Amherst.
Great, thank you very much. Just to remind the board members that are here, you should have your forms for your per diem. And just as far as housekeeping, bathrooms are down the hall go down to the left, out the door, down the hall on the left. If anybody needs a quick break, it's coffee and going to the back of the room. The agenda overall is pretty straightforward. We have to spend a little bit of time on a couple items, but I think we should be in pretty good shape as far as getting out on time. Remind everybody, just bring your questions through the chair, if you would, please, just to help expedite the meetings. With that, we will go right on to item number 2, which is the minutes of the September 10th meeting. Any comments on minutes from September 10th? Is there any objections to approving the minutes? Being none, the motion of the minutes are passed by consensus or approved by consensus. And we'll turn it right over to Laura for fund balances and project ends.
Nice, okay, oh, shoot, I always forget I get these glasses here. So here are the bond funds, oh, thank you. No, it's worse, thank you. That's better. Maybe I can remember the numbers. So on the top, you see the bond fund balances, and that $9,188 is all encumbered, I believe, at this point, or in the process of being encumbered.
Encumbered slash in the part, one of them are still.
Yeah, okay, so almost all gone, of that, the 2009 bond funds almost entirely depleted, which is great. Similarly, the 2011 bonds, those are, all but $14 of it is encumbered. I have no idea why, the 14, but all but $14 of that is encumbered. Below that, now you see the balances in our trust fund account as of October 31st. And you can see that rather large number is responsible for generating all of that interest down in the lower left, which you see is $1.65,400,000. That over $1.6 million. And then you see our restricted LMF funds and our unrestricted LMF gifts together. And so that is, and there'll be more talk of money. I promise there'll be more. I'll take a read any questions.
Questions on our fund balances? $14, put that to the coffee.
Put that. Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, let's move right along then to project allocation status.
Okay, this is a fun one. These are active projects only. You can see we have at the moment 24 CNR and alert person, but we had 28 last month. Yes, we did. 4 of them closed. And you can see below the expected closings that are across different program types. So you see how many active CNR, all of our projects, and what is allocated currently for those projects. Those numbers on the right include set-asides. So I think that's here, but I'll wait for any questions.
Well, every time you say those numbers on the right, I look at the other screen.
Oh, sorry.
It's the exact same number.
Yeah, we've not figured out how to get the screens to do different things.
Okay, any more? We have another slide?
Oh, we got so many more.
Oh, keep rolling.
Yeah, keep rolling. Okay, now here we go. This is a look at the same CNR funds with the set asides on the 30 million taken right off the top. So now we're just looking at some pure project funds available. And this is just within these subgroups. So out of the $30 million allocated to CNR funds, we have $1,591,562 left to spend. And obviously this has nothing to do with the interest, that's a step in pot of cash.
That says 1581.
Oh, did I say 581?
No.
91, it should be, yeah, I was like, I thought it was, yes. Which is, another person will notice, is $100,000 less than last time, because last time we approved an adjustment to Porter Hills with the Naser parcel we had out of it. Just so making you know that these are honest numbers, things change, like for real reasons, not random generated. Okay,
Do we know before you along or interest generated?
yes, I will, there will be another slide there for this. I do know it's $1,625,412. That you mean attributable to this?
It's the what?
Biggest law firm.
Somebody just needs to be,
Oh,
If somebody online, please make sure, if you're online, please make sure you're muted. Thank you.
I didn't understand the question, I'm sorry.
how much, I'm just trying to figure out of the interest generated, how much is gonna add to our conservation?
Oh, that is definitely a decision that we will talk about, yes. And I've got a couple of options for you to think about, that. And there's more money,
April.
Yeah, roll it. Okay, this is the status of the working farmland funds, and the reason you're seeing this today, not because we have any farmland projects that you're gonna need to approve today, but because there are already, there's already evidence within, the projects you have previously approved that their appraised value, and I believe, I know for working waterfront, we try never to, short people's appraised values. We try to be pretty, and I only assume that's true for working farmland as well. I don't actually know what the policy is there. But the Winslow Farm in particular has gotten an appraisal back in, and their estimate had been 775,000. It came back 1.3 million. They will be seeking an additional, was it 137.5 to make up the difference, which they would need that in addition to the 75 that's there, which is more than we have. And so that's just a bug in your ear for how skinny this fund is and how non-adaptable it is to these sort of relatively minor shifts in valuation.
That's provided.
The appraisal, they missed the deadline for this board meeting, so the appraisal will be back, I believe, in front of you next meeting, that likely, Jason.
Yeah, I have the appraisal, and it will go out to the AOC for the December 3rd meeting.
Yes, so they're on it. But this is the gun, this is the barrel of the gun. Okay, I think, one more, do we have any more? Next slide.
The last money slide.
Is that the last money slide? All right, that's left, but we will come back to the options. Okay, Joe, do you want to talk about project updates? Way to surprise you in the middle of it. This is Joe, everyone.
We should probably do an introduction here.
Yeah, I probably ought to do an introduction. This is Joe. Joe, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Joe Anderson. I'm acting capacity for Erica Dubois, who left just about a month ago or so now.
Yeah.
And so I started November 4th. I was in Bureau of Parks and Lands and Planning and Acquisition, and was primarily DSA for a lot of these projects. So I'm familiar with a number of both applicants, past and present and future, hopefully. And have also been tasked with the working forest component. Well, the project updates. Yes, and I'm learning too. This is my second week, so I'm learning as much every day, I guess.
A week to get it all done.
Right, but recently closed Beaver Brook, which is southern Maine. That's is that Saco? Scarborough, Jockey Cap, which is Freiburg. In fact, Laura and I had walked that project with the applicants when I was, part of the DSA. Salmon Falls Tidal Watershed, and that is in Elliott,
Berwick. Yeah.
Berwick,
Yeah.
and that's the, Great Works Regional Land Trust, and Three Ponds, One Forest, which I'm not as familiar with, but reviewing the file, it's a pretty expansive, project, and, what town is that?
I'm trying to remember and I'm drawing a
Bristol,
blank.
Bristol.
Yeah, that area.
So,
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah,
pretty-
and you did the GIS, you did these placements for us, didn't you?
Yes,
Which is why I threw it to you so fast without thinking about how.
that's right, that's right.
You're learning, she'll throw me
Right.
involved in a heartbeat.
And anticipated closings, in fact, we just got 2 signatures today, for Haystack Mountain and was it Porter Hills?
Porter Hills.
Porter Hills. And, so, I'm just been here a short time and things are progressing quickly and reaching out to applicants and I was surprised, that there is, anticipating closings, so I'm really hoping we just keep moving.
Yeah,
All right, then, thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
Any questions on the updates? Seeing none, we'll move right along.
Yeah.
That's me. All right, Old Woods Farm. Thank you, Jason. So A3. Oh, did we?
Oh, I mentioned, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned, any updates on the investment that I don't know. And there isn't much of an update, other than to say that there are conversations happening, there are conversations I understand. All I have to say about it. Sorry.
Nope.
Sure, we'll pay attention.
All right. So, Old Woods Farm, St. George, down by Tenants Harbor, 83 acres. This has been pre-acquired by the town and St. George Conservation Commission. Wetlands, woods, streams, open spaces, really pretty property out there. About 10 acres of it is wetlands out there. There's access to this off a right of way, off a private road. You can almost see that on this map here, that little dash line coming in right to left there. This was selected by the board May 16th of this year as a finalist. So the AOC met on the 9th. The initial allocation was for $34,000 based upon a preliminary appraisal. They since got an updated appraisal and it came back slightly higher at $74,000. The applicant is requesting that the increase in the award go up to $37,000, 50% of the appraised value. That they were asking for 50% before as well. So you folks have a motion before you to consider.
Acres has an appraised value of 74,000, which just seemed remarkably low, and I wasn't sure whether that was tied to restrictions associated with the subdivision, but if you could describe that.
Yeah, I had the same question. Some other people have had the same question. When it was initially approved by the planning board, they put specific conditions of their findings and facts on there to limit this property for conservation purposes and or to go to a land trust. So when you look at the appraisal, they absolutely took that into consideration, saying, well, we can't really do anything with it anyway at this point. Because otherwise, you're right. I mean, it's a very desirable area and it should be worth something more. But so the appraiser took that into consideration.
Have a motion on the table, committee vote table, which is approved. Objections to that motion? Seeing no objections in the vote online, motion passed.
Just some recent photos of what's out there. And the middle photo shows other areas. They actually, there's bigger plans out there. Hopefully in the future, the water department owns a lot of the properties to the north there. The darker green properties are already in conservation. So they just have some other visions out there, and they've already put up some signage out there and improved the trails on the property out there. Did our public notice. It was in the Kennebec Journal. There were no public comments received, so we have a second motion for you folks to consider. I will note again, if it's the board's, should feel so inclined, they were looking for the additional $3,000.
Yes, I move to confirm the allocation of $34,000 in LMF conservation and recreation funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions. Second?
Motion by Jim, seconded by Roger. Any questions or comments regarding this project?
I should have probably just noted, Ken Olberg is here on behalf of the Conservation Commission. No, no. Ken is online, this gentleman up there, yeah.
I'll give you an opportunity if you'd like to make a statement before the board votes. Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Perfectly, thank you.
Yes, yes. Well, I'd just like to thank the board for considering our project and moving it along. And I also like to thank the various planners we've worked with over the couple of years to give us guidance and helpful knowledge of going through the LMF process here. And we're looking forward to completing the project and opening it to the public shortly.
Great, thank you very much. I will, if there's no other questions from the board or comments, seeing none, you're back. I don't have good.
No, I just want to make sure I understand whether 34 or 37 is the figure that is being actually requested at this point. I was getting confused on those.
The initial request was for 34,000. That's what you folks acted upon when the initial award was made. With the updated appraisal, they could get, staying within the 50%, up to 37,000. So it's up to you folks whether or not there should be any increase.
Yeah, the board has the ability to increase that.
And we did request that. Yeah. we
Yeah.
did request, please.
The applicant has asked the board to consider the 37, correct?
I would withdraw my motion.
Well, the motion technically, motion technically belongs to the board now because it's been seconded. However, I think in this case, we could easily do friendly amendment on the motion just to reflect that they're changing 37. So Roger, you okay with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So let me read the new motion into the record. The motion is to confirm the allocation of $37,000 in LMF conservation and recreational funding to support the acquisition subject to standard conditions. Any opposition to the motion? Seeing no opposition in room or online, the motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving right along.
Right. This is me, Keezer River South. This is connected to your earlier Keezer River corridor lands. From the Greater Level Land Trust to be acquired in fee. It is, we know this area well now. A really a beautiful country, to larger, and to a lot of continuity. 90 acres, forest, shrub, and wetlands, and accessible, easily accessible for all the recreational uses we like to see. Selected back in 2023. Questions? Next. Slide, please. The appraisal oversight committee met on October 29th to discuss the appraisal and accepted the appraised reported value of $2,115,000. We have here a draft. Motion for
Need to approve the recommendation of the LMF with oversight committee and accept the appraisal value of $2,115,000.
The committee motion, but I need a second. Is there any opposition to the motion? Not seeing any opposition online or in the room. The motion passes.
And there was also, we also ran public notice in the Portland Press Herald on November the 9th. Did not give any comments. And so we prepared a draft motion as well for the allocation of $1,035,000 in LMF conservation recreation funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions.
Good question. Good question, yeah. Did you participate in the AOC discussion? I mean, it
Yes.
looked to be a potentially complex. Were there any significant issues that they had to work through?
I don't remember, I'm not, my memories is always sterling, but I was definitely there in the room. This was my, I definitely did the summary in the report, but I don't remember any particular concerns about this appraisal. No. No. I think, no, it wasn't Jesse. It was not Jesse. It was,
I don't recall.
Okay.
do you remember David, please? I
No.
don't remember who it was. We did a couple of them back to back. Was it Nate? Was it Nate? Nate?
I don't recall.
I don't remember who it was. I'm so sorry.
We have Erica with us, though, if she wants to contribute to. Erica Rowland from the Land Trust.
Fantastic. Thank you. So-
Sure. Was there a question about the appraisal or appraiser? It wasn't quite clear.
Just curious as to who the appraiser was.
Oh, it was Peter Nault, McManus and Nault.
Okay.
And then we also, because we have federal funding involved, we had an appraisal review done as well on his initial appraisal.
Thank you. Any questions from the board on the project? So a motion would be in order. Tim?
Yes, I move to confirm the allocation to $1,035,000 in LMF conservation recreation funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Roger. Any questions or comments on the motion? Is there any opposition to the vote? Seeing no opposition in the room or online, motion passes. Great, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Erica. This is the one with the map. This is Mill River Forest. This is a round 10 project. And this has been hard won for Western Foothill Land Trust. This is a fee acquisition. This follows the Edwards Mills phase 1 to create, again, huge swaths of protected land, forest, 173 acres of wetlands, habitat, aquifer. It's got it all going on there. And deer wintering habitat as well. Also readily accessible. This, as you know, was selected by the board on September 27th, 2022. It has been a long journey for Western Foothills Land Trust on this one. Next slide, please. And the appraisal oversight committee met on October 29th and reported that the appraiser reported the value of $2,480,000, and the committee accepted that appraised value. I want to say it was the same appraiser, but I don't trust myself. But I think it was the same appraiser. And we prepared a draft motion for your consideration.
I'd like to make it see. motion.
I'll just keep going with it. To approve the recommendation of the LMF in the oversight committee and accept the appraiser's value of $1,480,000.
Great. That's committee motion. Does that need a second? Any questions on the motion or the project? Great, what's your say? Seeing none, just reading the record that, motion is to approve the recommendation of the AOC and accept the appraised value of $2,480,000. Is there any opposition to the motion? Seeing no opposition in the room or online, motion passes.
Thank you. And next slide. So we announced public notice. It ran on November 9th. We did not receive any comments. This was in the Portland Press Herald. So this is where the math comes in. It's so fun. This project had been part of the Edwards Mills course, and together the combined allocation had been 1,905,500. I think that's the right number. And when Edwards Mills closed, we dispersed 302,000, the balance here. That 1,605,500 is more than they're entitled to. So we are giving the board two options here, because it obviously needs to be reduced. If we want to award them the maximum of their work, 50% of fair market value of the combined value of this project, that would be the $1,438,000 number. If we wanted to maintain the same percentage project acquisition disbursement to match ratio, it would be that lower number down below, 1,211,800. And I can tell you that Western Foothills Land Trust is very interested in. They were very interested to know that they had leftover maps. They wanted to be sure we were aware. We remembered that they had this match banks, but they weren't just stuck with the one. I assured them that we had not forgotten that there would be some decisions to be made here. But those are the two choices.
So they haven't, you're saying they have enough matched with the lower figure?
They have enough match with both figures.
For
The higher, the 1.438, they have, you're right on the money for match. It just would be a greater award to match ratio than
Yeah.
originally. Hopefully that's clear. I think the 1.438 million would be really helpful to them. They've been through a very, very lot. And it is still less than they had been hoping for, obviously, but they've been through a lot. And they can definitely.
Well, number one, my objective is to have this project be successful.
Right.
So if any of this path of thinking conflicts with that, then I'll take it off the table.
Right.
That said, I'm always thinking about what is the remaining money that could help the next great project. And so it wasn't clear to me whether this project could be successful with less match. And if it could, then I'd sort of advocate for that. But it wasn't clear to me whether it was possible.
Right. Well, and I don't know if, I'm sure that they would say, yeah, is Casey online?
Yes, he is.
Oh, let's ask Casey what she thinks for match. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say that, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. If we were to go with that lower number, keeping the match the same at 1.211, we would end up with a little bit of a funding gap. We are more or less fully funded right now we just have one allocation still pending with the Portland Water District that is expected to come in mid-December. So we're hoping to close in the first quarter of next year. So with that lower number, we would have a gap of like in the $30,000 range. The 1.438 would be extraordinarily useful, but I will confess that it is not 100% necessary. I think what we have carrying in our budget right at the moment is the 50% of the appraised value at 1,240,000. But we are a little bit shy on the budget, just a little bit. I think if the allocation were in the 1,255,000 range, that would be both help us and allow you to pass along the balance to another project.
So the 1,255,000 would allow you to have no funding gaps, be able to close in the first quarter and save us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Assuming the Portland Water District comes through on their approvals, which I fully expect they will, but that's correct.
Great, thank you very much. Mac, I see your hand up.
Yes, I would note that the amount of money we're talking about here is in very roundish figures, about half of what we have left for the next round. So it makes me want to be a bit frugal if we can.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mac. And I do definitely appreciate the openness of the applicant, not saying they need the full amount here. So with that information, it's certainly like to make a motion. Yeah,
Yes, I move to confirm an allocation of $1,255,000 in LMF conservation and recreation funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions. And I too am very pleased that the applicant chose to be so transparent with the project.
yeah. Jim, seconded by Roger. Is there any questions or comments on the motion? Putting it back into the record, confirming the allocation of $1,255,000 in LMF conservation and recreational funding to support acquisition subject to standard conditions. Is there any opposition to the motion? Being no opposition in the room or online, motion passes. Great, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, Big Sand Beach, Sislodopsis Lake. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Sackham Township. Fee acquisition by Down East Land Trust, a 17.6 acre parcel. It's got this great looking beach there, with almost 1,500 feet of street frontage, shore frontage, used for swimming, picnicking. There's potential to have a trailered boat launch there. BPL is the DSA with this, and this is a water access funding. I should have mentioned that as well. There is a boat launch at the north end of the lake. There's nothing at the south end of the lake. It's located within the Down East Lakes Community Forest area, and I believe it also abuts some tribal land as well. This was selected as a finalist June 17th, 2023. AOC acted on this on October 8th. The appraiser's value was for $306,000, and they accepted the appraisal. There's a motion for the board's consideration.
Actions for the motion.
That's just giving you a better idea of where the potential access will be for the boat launch and parking. And we did a public notice in the Bangor Daily News. There were no comments received. There's a second motion for you folks to consider. I will note Lindsay from the Land Trust is available as well.
I think this was my brother's.
My glasses are in the car.
All
All right, wait a
Oh,
minute. I move we confirm the allocation of $100,000 in LMF water access funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions. Well done.
Beth, any questions or comments on the motion? On the record, this is to confirm the allocation of $100,000 in LMF water access funds for the acquisition subject to standard conditions. Is there any opposition to the motion? In no opposition in the room or online, motion passes. Great, would the applicant like to say anything before we start?
Thank you very much.
That's perfect. Short and sweet. Like, thank you. That's a great project. Yeah.
All right. I think this is our last project to be acted on, Ward Farm in Thorndike. This is a 417 acre agricultural conservation easement, including 126 acres of open fields, which includes some organic row crops as well as pasture and hayfield. This is one of the very, very long time farms in Thorndike. It is on Ward Hill Road. And in addition to the farmland, there is some commercial timber production on the property. And this is a round 11 farmland project selected by the board in September of 2023. The AOC met on October 29th to consider this one. The appraised value was $290,000, which was accepted by the committee. I will note that this is very slightly less than the initial estimate of $300,000, which means that the final award will be, they'll be eligible for 145 down from the 150 that was the preliminary allocation. There is a draft motion for you.
The motion does not need a second. Is there any questions on the motion or on the appraisal? Being none, is there any objection? Being no objection in the room or online, the motion passes.
All right, public notice in the Bangor Daily. No comments were received, and the second motion is there for you.
5,000 in working farmland funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions.
Second.
Motion by Beth, seconded by Roger. Any questions on the motion? Questions, we give them the record. This is a motion to confirm the allocation of 145,000 in working farmland funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions. Is there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections in the room or online, the motion passes. Great. Thank you very much. Good work. We're then going to move on to item number 7, which is report on underrepresented areas.
Yes.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, making these slides are so fun. Okay, you can see the topics for discussion throughout of the last board meeting and the chart to us to go find out about this and to see whether there were, we can find some consensus. Are there places that are underrepresented? Why? If so, why? And what do we mean by it? And if you think, there are gaps, right, they exist. And as for a working definition that I would suggest we use today, would be, are there gaps where it's clear there's demand? It's clear there's demand, but there's not conservation happening. I'd say that's a pretty good working knowledge of that. And you can see this was the picture, the map on the right there is what that's obviously our conserved land map. And think of the next slide. Thank you. Oh, and then there's a lot of data crunch by Jake Metzler and Matt Hunter to show percentage of conserved land. That far right column on the screen on the left, it shows the percentage of conserved land when all is taken into account. This one includes water and Wabanaki as well as our traditional conserved lands. And then the next slide is the one actually that had the pictorial representation I wanted to have in front of you all. We have the ecoregions, and then we have on the right the map of land trust distributions. And then actually finally, next slide. The one on the right there, this was the depiction that shows in the light green areas, you can see conservation lands. The yellow are unorganized territories. And the pink, all that pink there are organized townships. Orange are Wabanaki, or indigenous lands. And you can see this pattern that comes up where it's really the organized townships that have the greatest trouble. That for land trusts have the hardest time finding partners or finding capacity, and the towns themselves have difficulty with capacity.
You're talking small, relatively local income.
We're talking, yeah, that's the point
As
of the,
opposed to,
like, Maine Coast Heritage Trust, if that's okay username. And so, yeah, there are capacity issues all through, and this pattern emerges. And what we discovered, and Mac, I'm gonna be looking to you, I don't have to tell you this, please fill in the gaps here for my explanation. What we discovered is that although there are wheres, there are places, that sort of central corridor there, you can see there's a gap. There are also places that pop up southern Maine. There are gaps there too. And sort of a unified theory of where was a little hard to come at this stage. It's not a purely geographical population. There are various overlays and various ways to think about it. And the group was just incredibly thoughtful. The consensus was like, this was the first of a big conversation. There's more to learn here. And that scoring is not, we're not ready to think about how to do that yet. Was actually the consensus of this group as well, that our problem at LMF is not that we're getting good projects that aren't scoring well, is that there are these areas that aren't bringing projects to us for their own reasons. And Maine Coast Heritage Trust and Maine Land Trust Network is leading the conversation with stakeholders to try to get it, what that might look like, what that might mean, and to help create the grassroots support necessary to bring those things forward. And one of our panelists talked about the hope of being able to more accurately identify and pinpoint the hotspots, the really high priority areas that we then might think about. But to do it now on sort of gross terms, either by ecoregion or by county, it'd be a sledgehammer that would smash all kinds of things that we don't want to hit and not necessarily help the things that we do. And I think, oh, and I, the last slide will have the list of people who helped, because it was an extraordinary group of people who came together. And then can I ask Mac if he can add to that summary?
Yeah.
Mac, would you?
No, I think, yeah, I'm not sure I have anything to add. I think you've done this very well. I guess I would emphasize that the problem that bothers me the most is those areas where we're not getting proposals. They are both underrepresented in terms of the distribution of conservation areas, both from an ecological perspective and the perspective of public recreation opportunities. There are significantly underrepresented areas from which we are not getting proposals because the capacity's not there. And that seems to be the key nut to work on. It became clear that both counties, which of course are very strangely distributed in terms of their size and shapes, and even the ecoregions are too coarse a tool to look at this problem. We have to be thinking at smaller scale.
Thank you, Mac. Thank you.
yeah, the question of, I like the caveat that you made regarding demand. And, how was demand figured into this process? That one is a tough one for me as to where the source of data would be so that these overlaid onto each other.
Yeah, so the reason I came up with that little twist, demand, was the conversations that Jennifer Brockway and Brett West were talking about, how in their area, they are experiencing high demand. People at exactly the right time in their lives really wanting to protect their land, and towns don't have capacity to do it. Land trusts at this stage are spread too thin. They don't have the capacity to do it. There's this pent up demand and no capacity to serve the demand. And so that's who knows if my takeaway is like two people's comments and nobody else shares it, but that was a thing that there was a general nodding of heads, like, yes, this is what's happening here. And that's part of why I think, the Maine Land Trust Network and Maine Coast Heritage Trust are working to try to build that grassroots support, that it needs to come from within. They need to find ways to, in order to be sustainable for this, they're gonna try to foster that grassroots support and grow it, I think organically. That's my understanding. I hate to paraphrase Jeff Romano, he's not maybe here today. But does that answer your question? Like, where does demand come from? Why do I think there's demand, or what?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
That's on the basis of a couple of anecdotes. That's scientific, right? So yes, that is literally where I thought, okay, maybe we can think of it that way. Mostly because the entering this conversation, one of the things that I had heard over and over again is it's not there because they don't want it. And I wanted us to be clear that we weren't assuming that that's always true. Sometimes I'm sure it is true, but it's not always true. And that probably is too facile an approach to a problem that, you know, seems to really exist, but from the people who are on the ground, the stakeholders. And how I chose the stakeholders, I had these assumptions that it was kind of center, but like northerly center. It's only after this conversation, I became much more aware of, oh, it's southerly, it's also, you know, it's not that clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joey Bassett in there.
Not the spruce actually.
Right. Max, why don't you go ahead?
Yes, one thing that Brent West mentioned that was not captured here is he showed a map of the distribution of income by township and the distribution of conservation projects, and it became clear that part of the story is local capacity in terms of money. We do require a 50% match, and that alone is a significant factor.
Well, I was just thinking about this from a 30,000 foot level, and whenever there is a circumstance that's highly nuanced and that you could dig into the weeds for a very long time and come to a variety of different conclusions as to why you're not getting applications and what could help that situation. I'm often left with the question of like, couldn't we at least, like, what could we at least do in the near term, recognizing that this is a problem in that it's a complex enough issue that it will require a longer period of time to figure out entirely. But I do think that some interim steps could be either, you know, coming up with a clear deadline by which you are hoping that community conversations could happen with a recommendation back to the board. A pilot-ish round that sort of takes some of your underlying assumptions, like, you know, I don't know enough about the machinations of application rounds, but things like, what if you did have some sort of a round that targeted organized towns in Rim counties or communities north of Route 2, or certain things that this group, after one other conversation, seems to be in consensus around. Not assuming that that is going to solve the problem, but that it may, it may just uncover more, more of what's the underlying issue.
That's right. I mean, you certainly shouldn't wait till things are perfect to do anything, for sure. And one of the things that we do recommend as staff is that we be included in these conversations and learn more. One of our marching orders going out to this conversation was that we should not come back with a solution that limited the number of applicants in this round. At least that was the takeaway I had. But that doesn't mean that's always true, or even true at all today, if you change your mind about that. But that is, I think, staying in touch and as being part of this conversation is really important for us. And there was real gratitude for us convening that conversation. Not that we were the first convening, but it's ongoing. Yeah, and also we also wanted to remind the board that in our workbook are already some, they're the qualitative pieces of is this a brand new applicant? Is this geographically, have the geographical representation? Is this someone who's never applied before? We can already take those things into account too, in our scoring system. But, yeah.
Beth?
Many facets. First, I'll say I also talked to Jeff Urbano, and I feel like your summary did justice to what I also heard and absorbed. So,
Thank you.
and I guess I wanted to ask about appreciating that the Wabanaki were listed as a distinct element in that chart, whether or not this committee has had any sort of past conversations explicitly talking about land back and how that role fits within our purview. Also holding that within the workbook and the guidelines, it is not mentioned explicitly.
Right. I should tell you that I've passed my first 2 sessions of my own learning journey, the first learning journey. That is the thing that I am doing, thanks to the department sending me and putting this. So I look forward to all that I will learn.
Well, you want to explain what that is?
Sure. Well, let's see if I know enough to explain it. But yes, it's going to be a year-long commitment, 2 days a month of study, reflection, conversation with the First Light people and with Indigenous guests who come and talk to us and help us understand. Their foundation is definitely the land back. That's definitely it's organized around this effort. And as I say, I've been to 2, so I'm in these steps of the journey. No, it is not in our workbook otherwise. Our framework is that we are inclusive to the max. And that's been the understanding I have gotten from our AAG as well, in terms of, any kind of exclusivity anywhere is a thing we can't do. But we can be inclusive to the max, and I suspect that is where our conversations can go very truthfully. And probably I should stop talking.
I think Mac, you have your hand back up, Mac?
Yes, but and now for 2 issues. I guess I'll speak briefly to the Wabanaki issue first. I have had a lot of conversations in this realm, and one of the issues I believe is simply they have a problem accepting the conditions of the sorts of grants. Their concepts of sovereignty make the acceptance of conditions restricting their abilities to develop a piece of land a complicated issue. Let's just put it that way. And I think that is why, perhaps the main reason we have not seen them in. Yeah, but maybe there's a path forward. That'll be interesting. Changing gears while I have the microphone, and responding to Laura's suggestion that under number 7 that we have qualitative criteria in our workbook. We should have a conversation before May about what that really means, because I've yet to see those qualitative criteria ever really play into a decision. They could, but I don't know how the mechanics of that would work. And I think we should perhaps pre-discuss a path through qualitative criteria that could influence a decision before we're actually facing a decision. It might be best to anticipate that conversation. In theory, those 2 questions that I asked there go right to the heart of the issues at hand, and addressing them could solve a lot of problems. But we don't have a track record of undertaking the use of these qualitative criteria.
Yeah, Mac, I appreciate those comments. I think that conversation should definitely happen before we start scoring the next round of projects. Because we all kind of come at that a little bit differently. Okay, so this is not an actionable item. I certainly appreciate the conversation that staff had with our partners on this issue. I know when Mac first brought this up to me, we were, it was very kind of, a step back, looking at kind of like, where are the big gaps? But it's clear now that you have gotten into the weeds here a little bit, it's not just about big gaps. And it is about capacity. Has there been conversation with the Land Trust Network about having this be a topic at their spring gathering that they hold?
I hadn't asked that exact question. I know there are conversations that are happening. It's
Yeah.
that I. But I can find out.
You know, maybe that's, this is, the capacity issue is not something we can solve. So and we have to ensure that if we're gonna have around, to take these things into consideration, that we're not changing match requirements for these things. There has to be consistency amongst the process. But I think, you know, this conversation that we just had about the quantitative criteria, though, I think is something we can do as a board prior to the next round. So if everybody's in agreement with that, I think unless there's any other questions, we can move on to the next item.
I just wanted to mention who everybody on that team. Sure, I never thank them all. Jake Metzler, Brent West, Jeff Romano, Joe Markway, Steve Young, and our partners at BPA, Louise Flora, Dan Grenier, and Rex Turner. And Joe was there then. And Matt Klemper and Catherine.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. That's a good conversation, and I really appreciate the fact that that's together. I think this is not an easy one to deal with.
Thank you.
So let's move on to item number 8, which is access improvement grant code amendment. Okay, so
Yes.
please.
I will try to break this down as quickly as I can. There's a little bit to unpack here. This is a staff proposal for a change to the process by which we accept applications for access improvement grants and make those awards. And this also applies to the farm capital improvement grants that we also make post-closing on farmland projects. I'm using access improvement grants as kind of the catch-all because that we do more of those, but it applies equally to both of those categories. So what process we've been doing is in every year in January, for the January board meeting, I round up all the projects that closed during the previous calendar year and share those with you guys with a breakdown of essentially how much access improvement money they would be eligible to apply for. And you guys formally vote to open an application period for all those projects to come in and apply, and also formally vote on how much money they will be eligible to apply for. And then we send out March, and at the March board meeting, we run through 5 or 10 or 15 access improvement grant requests, and you make the awards, and they have 18 months to do the project. So there are this particular change that we're talking about today is not something that we've specifically discussed with any stakeholder group. It's something that staff have come up with in response to some general concerns that we've heard from both applicants and staff about this process. From the staff side, this is a big lift in January through March when all those are flooding in, especially as busy as we've been the past few years. And we've seen some kind of confusion and frustration from applicants as far as, they'll close in February or March of 1 year and say, well, when can I get my access improvement money? And we'll say, well, wait, come back in a year. We'll remind you. And there are some applicants at the same time who like having that year to kind of take stock of what they have and make their management plan, and then, think about other fundraising, other grants, and then come in and ask for the money. So what we've tried to do is come up with a proposed process that would sort of be responsive to all of that and hopefully work better. And what that is make these awards on a rolling basis. So that they would say, when they close, that starts a clock. They have 12 months to apply that want to, spend some time taking stock of their project, still have that option. Then what we would do is, when those came in, staff would line those up for you at the next board meeting. You'd have, 2 or 3 or 5 at any given board meeting that we would run through, and you would make that award. So in authorizing this, that amount of how much they could apply for would be set. The way this would work, I think, would be, it's in the round 13 draft workbook. So that would, by adopting that workbook as it currently is, you'd be making this change going forward. And then we could also make it effective on all the active projects by a motion today. Projects that have closed so far, already closed in 2024, I think what seems fair to me is saying you have either 1 year from when you closed, or if the projects that closed very early in 2024, and there are 5 of them that would be affected by this, would have until February 28th of next year to apply, because that is when their original deadline would have been under the old system. So nobody is having their time cut short in this. Everybody is getting the same or more time. So I do have a draft motion on the next slide, but before I go to that, are there questions about what we're looking at and why?
Seems to me that you just don't want a lot of work on your plate when we're doing a CNR run at the same time.
Yeah, we had a little bit of conversation about whether it was going to be more work or less work to spread it out over the year.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it makes really good sense, the way you laid this out. So, any thoughts, Jim?
Yeah, I'd just like to commend the staff for keeping an open mind and looking to improve. Pretty easy to just lie dormant and go with the flow. So again, the staff has shown some great judgment and looking out for its best.
Thank you.
All the staff.
I will say Julia gets extra credit because she's going to be doing a lot of the work of processing these, and we've talked about that. We're not just dumping this on her. We've had this has been a full staff discussion about this change.
If there's, so you want to deal with this as a separate motion, not part of the work?
I think the workbook would apply to round 13, but applying this to all the active projects does need a separate motion.
Okay.
So I have that motion. It is a little bit wordy because of all of the moving parts of it, and I apologize. I did the best I could.
Apply for access and grants or farm capital improvement grants as applicable at any time within 12 closing date or by February 28th, 2025, whichever. Projects may apply for up to an amount equal to 5% of the first $200 of the value of the parcels receiving funding and 2% of the face value over $200,000 up to a maximum of
Seconded by Roger. Additional questions or comments? I'm not reading it back. All remember. Is there any opposition to the motion? Seeing no opposition in the room, online, the motion passes. It's really, I think the way you had described this to me earlier. This makes me, it's like good way, yeah, it's a good way to be thinking about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, great. All right, so with that,
Just gets
let's move on to the work.
Okay, so much fun stuff. These guys are gonna be not pretty. So, round 13 workbook. These slides here give you a very brief overview of the acknowledgements. pretty high time to acknowledge and Maine Natural Areas Program for what they do to help us get out the door. That's in there. A little bit of minor historical information added to the introduction. Namely, I just thought it was so interesting that the first workbook ever lasted like 10 years. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was good to know because I couldn't make the numbers line up. How many in the 14th edition and how many anyway? So I added that. And then obviously the stuff links, state context, states assessment and needs assessment that I incorporated a reference to the inclusion of the climate council. It's part of, you know, what the board has been doing, actively looking and learning. So I added that. And then the guidelines included we hoped you would approve AIG commitment. Thank you. And that there you see that and that. So any questions about that? Next slide, please. Okay, same deal. You guys would be so happy to know that we're now going to ask them for 11 paper copies of the proposal narrative, which we are going to define as not the appendices. So really bulky things, maps, things like that, they can digitally send those. But for that narrative, you guys are going to get paper copies. And I understand that may be upsetting to people in some of our, but we saw in fact how it worked, and we had a bunch of PDF bricks in the cloud, and you guys were reduced to having to print out your own copies. It wasn't working. Okay, then there'll be some scoring criteria adjustments. There'll be a slide with those in particular. We'll see that separately. Section 3, public access to main waters. We deleted the quote expedited process. Probably you didn't even know it was there. So it was a process that sounded good, but it meant that for water access applications, we were passively encouraging people to get their appraisals done and their, before the purchase and sale, which is obviously very good, but then coming to the AOC before the board had approved the project. And we have never, on staff in our years, we've never seen that happen, but also the biggest danger we have to face, the biggest lesson we need to drive home to applicants is to get it right the first time, and nothing is longer than a shortcut. And so encouraging this behavior seemed like it was just wrong and telegraphing the wrong idea about how fast we can move. It's 8 weeks for procurement. We're not moving on a dime. We're not going to be able to do that. And setting those expectations seemed like the right thing to do. So that's why off it came. And then just really minor cleanup in the standard conditions and next steps to make it harmonized with what we hope is your approved appendix A public behavior access features. All of those would be more specifically addressed on the slides. Any kind of scintillating stuff. Next page. Okay, here we have the accessibility. You can see the insertion of the words in green, guaranteed and vehicular, into that scoring metric. And yeah, that's pretty straightforward to make sure we're clear what we're talking about here. This is the first half of that metric. Next half, and then here you see making it clear how important the distance. That was that other, like, oh, pedestrian access or something nearby is not really going to be very interesting to you if it's not close to public vehicular access. 75-mile long pedestrian walkway isn't really going to be a thing. You go, oh, great. So those two things are getting, those two larger things are getting at that. I think that covers that. Questions? Yeah, no, that's.
Sort of question. I'm glad that Joe is in the room as well, because I'm recalling with Forest Legacy scoring criteria. This is a key issue of what level of public access is allowed, and that public pedestrian access is required and vehicular access is not, but you get more points if it is. And I'm just curious about how those two programs square with one another, if it's known off the top of anybody's head, and if not, that's fine. How Forest Legacy, named Forest Legacy scoring criteria, and this square with one another, just try and make sure that they're not completely at odds with one another. I don't think they are, but it's just.
One thing, I think this particular criteria for us is looking really at getting to the property.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like the Forest Legacy is maybe talking about getting around on the property. We have, okay, oh, no, okay, okay.
I'm certainly saying you can get there by pedestrian access, but we're not gonna store it highly if that pedestrian access is connected to some vehicular. That's what we're trying to get at, and all of these things, and for the island, one of the things is an island, we're not really assuming people have to swim, you know? So it's still vehicular, it's not just cars, it's, you know, is this, and it is for scoring. You'll see, you know, a 0 is a 0, and when you get to the appendix H, you'll see, a little more about that particular access policy, where, how it might be.
And I still believe we have a lot of flexibility as a board.
Oh.
Right, and that's what's important.
Oh, should I go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Keep it rolling. Okay, thank you. Okay, these are way more interesting. Jason, you, I didn't, so climate change adaptations, all because Jason went to Raleigh. And
Yes.
learned all of this. Do you want to talk
You
about
want me,
this?
you mean, that means you want me to talk about this?
But
Yeah, no, I'm happy to.
Smarter about it than I was.
So, yes, climate resilience, we've always scored based on, primarily on a model of terrestrial climate resilience developed by the Nature Conservancy, which is still here, still captured in subsection A. But TNC just this fall released their new freshwater climate resilience. So we've added subsection B here. And
I'm sure all of it.
there is a lot. The thing to understand is that they've identified freshwater systems, which includes estuaries to some extent. And exactly where you cross over from sort of freshwater to coastal is a little bit of a judgment call. But they've modeled the resilience of these freshwater systems to climate change, and it is a function of the undeveloped character of the watershed, the presence or absence of dams, primarily dams, as passage barriers, connection to the ocean. There are some other things that go into it. I think. So what we've proposed is that projects that are in basins that are both resilient and have recognized biodiversity, and that's what this restore resilient designation that's mentioned here means. That those get points as long as but I guess we have three criteria here. That's one of them. Another one is that there are no passage barriers between the project area and the larger river or stream system. And the reason we've added that is because there are some smaller dams on smaller streams and headwaters that TNC just wasn't able to include in their modeling because they weren't going to ground truth tens of thousands of those on a nationwide scale. So we've added that as something that we need to be aware of.
So are you suggesting that if there is no if there are passage barriers that they wouldn't get this?
So I think I'm talking about essentially. I guess so a lot of the dams on the larger rivers are taken into account in the modeling. The model kind of, for lack of a better term, understands that the ability of fish to move, within this river system is constrained by these dams. There are places where the model doesn't understand that on smaller streams, and had a fairly extensive conversation with some of the TNC folks who worked on the model. And their feedback was, in those areas where that those dams exist, the model doesn't really recognize. that river system is less resilient by virtue of being less connected than the model thinks it is. A big part of the freshwater resilience that they looked at was the ability of fish and other aquatic species to move through a river stream system to find different refugia and different gradients, different flows, different temperatures. So that is one of the things that we would suggest the board look at in the scoring, just to, to say, essentially say, okay, just make sure there are no passage barriers the model hasn't already accounted for. And the way the model,
Let me just try to make this a little blunt. If there are passage barriers, do they get points or do they not? I feel like you're saying that there's.
They should.
what's it?
What I understood, in some of the smaller systems, they're getting a resilience score that's maybe higher than is actually
Yeah.
on the ground.
Seem them to be honest.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to be honest.
I don't think in any way, shape or form, if there is a passage barrier, and maybe I'm missing something, that if we're looking at an estuary project.
Yeah.
And there are two barriers within that estuary. But the conservation benefit and value of protecting that estuary should not be linked to whether there is barriers there or not.
Well, because it's climate, not necessarily just fish patch, right? So
But here, it's,
lots of climate benefits
Unless
of
that-
that estuary.
to me, we should be saying they should get the points if there are barriers there, right? Because then we have maybe a better opportunity, because of the land being tied up, of resolving those barriers.
We could, I mean, I think that would be as a decision the board could make. What I've proposed here is essentially, let me finish my explanation, and I'll get to that.
Okay.
It's a very good point. That was exactly one of the points that my person I've talked to at TNC made is these can be a great way of identifying restoration and dam removal opportunities. So two right here. Recognized as resilient, no sort of passage barriers the model hasn't considered, and that the river system, what they call a functionally connected network, which is the area between the dams essentially, is largely resilient on the theory that protecting a specific resilient site within a larger resilient system is more valuable than protecting, a resilient site in a degraded system in terms of we can be more confident that it's going to stay resilient into the future. What I've suggested here is that all three of those get you 5 points, and two out of the three would get you 2 points, so that if that's where your resilient but has some passage barriers comes in. Or in the alternative, you get the same 5 points for salt marsh migration. We moved that was part of our climate scoring, and we moved that into this rather than the terrestrial because we thought it was more closely related.
Is it safe to say, one of the things that I loved about this conversation was I said there was no wrong answer for some of the same reasons, that it's either, this is the point where they get to tell us why it's so important that they acquire it so they can restore. Or, but they won't get as many points for that. Partly as I understand it, because the kinds of things you need to do to restore aren't the kinds of things we can necessarily fund. Is that like the kind of major? But this is the point of the conversation, that they get to make that pitch to us. Or we get to identify places that are pristine and we want to maintain that capacity. I don't know if am I off my rock?
I think that's right. Then, yeah, if the long-term resilience of this system is going to be dependent on dam removal, the dam removal is going to be a much larger conversation than we at LMF can drive.
Talking about two different things, storing connectivity versus bank conservation.
Right.
Reversing to the prior slide very briefly and then going back to this one. Thank you.
Again.
This is the new category within the climate adaptation section.
Right, so this would bump, so right now there's 10 points in climate resilience. It's five for resilience and 5 for underrepresented geophysical settings. This would bump it to 15 total points, 5 terrestrial, 5 aquatic, and still the 5 for underrepresented geophysical settings.
So the maximum points that a project could receive theoretically is 155 points now.
Yes.
So can I do this? It will seem like a completely unrelated point, but I'm going to be giving a presentation in a few weeks at a US Climate Alliance learning lab, and what I was asked to speak on was where are there funding programs at the state level that include equity considerations in their scoring criteria. So a prime example is LMF, because it's one of the few programs that sort of says it explicitly under the community section. But when you really drill down to it, so that's great in that it's, the wording is there, but when you look at it on a percentage basis, when there's 150 points total, the maximum that could receive is like 3, right? Which means it's like a 1.33% potential impact. So anytime, and that's depressing personally, but anytime you add more points into the total, that makes that number even smaller. And I think it's already quite small, so it's just, it's unrelated in some respects, but it's completely related.
Yeah, I was going to simplify that by just saying, I realize we're talking about 5 points in the student thing here, but I just philosophically don't like saying you're not going to get points just because there is a barrier within this land project, right? This is the land in the future. I understand the climate component, but this is the world I live in. So the idea that we could protect this land and have it controlled by the land trust or a state agency to help simplify the ability to do some of this work might be a good thing. Versus dealing with a private landowner who is, which we deal with all the time, which is like, you're not touching my little game.
Right.
I should clarify that the dams we're talking about here in most cases will not be part of the project area. They're just dams that are sort of downstream of it.
Yeah.
But yes, that is a decision the board could make, would be to take that piece of it out. I will, with understanding that the presence of dams on larger rivers, and they used a cutoff of drainage area for what they included in the model, what they didn't. That is just a core piece of their modeling, and there's no way around that.
Yeah.
But the smaller dams we could choose to disregard in our scoring if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'll go along with whatever the board wants here, just because the reason that Jody much clearly articulated than I, my bluntness did, but I'm happy to go either way. It just gives me a heartburn to say we're not going to barriers to fit as a challenge in what could be a really solid project. Doesn't feel right.
I haven't scrutinized this at all, but is there any way to integrate this feature in a modified format that doesn't increase the total score beyond 10?
I mean, the numbers can be whatever you want them to be. I think is
Just reduce what we
we could, instead of 5, 5, and 5, we could say 3, 3, and 4, or something like that. Oh, so say that there's 3 subcategories, each worth 5. Your maximum is 10.
Yeah. I think 150 is a nice number. I prefer the social impacts.
Something that long ago that we tried to get the numbers lower anyway, and here we are growing up.
Exactly. This is why I'm so excited to have somebody a chance to relook at all of this, because they're reading, that I don't like to be done. Yes. So, if, just so that we're clear on what we need to do, it. Do we need to change that, remove the reference to, any barriers is that what we need to do, remove the reference and then be like maximum 10, or what's the?
I would want to hear more discussion from the board around the barriers piece and whether you'd like to have that be part of it.
I have to think about it. Mac, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I like the idea of, having a cap of 10. It's pretty unlikely that a project could score 5, 5, 5 anyway. But an overall reaction is this is so complicated. It is such a small portion of the overall thing. It's hard for me to imagine that a group out there saying, well, shall we bring this to LMF or not? And having this criterion influence that decision. So partly because of the difficulty of understanding it, I wondered, do we need to make a decision on this today? Could we go back to the drawing board and try to make this a bit simpler?
Well, without approval of this, we wouldn't be approving the workbook, which means we wouldn't be going out with an RFP. So if we wanted to push the RFP out 2 months, we certainly could do that.
Certainly could.
I would just remind the board, we've talked about wanting to get this RFP out the door for this, there's a benefit for political.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to delay that process 2 months for this. That would definitely be letting the tail wag the dog to let this criterion delay us for a couple months.
Yeah, I agree, Mac. I mean, this is, I think the idea that we're thinking about models for giving 5 points is, there's some complication here that I feel like we don't need.
And there's a typo in this. It should not say restore resilient. It should say resilient protect. And I think so. If there was a desire to make this scoring simple,
yeah.
I think that you could say if you are in a basin that has this resilient protect designation, you get 5 points, full stop. I will one caveat to that. The second half of that, or the LMF board determines that it should be considered that based on local knowledge. And the reason I put that in is there are some shortfalls we heard from TNC. There are basins that show up as having altered flow regimes that just don't. You get above all the dams, the water is falling in the forest, it is running down the river. This is a natural flow, and it is showing up as being human altered flow and less resilient as a result. And that's just, as far as we can tell, wrong. And we don't want to shortchange those projects.
One option, going through the slides, making sure we're all set on that, and we could ask the staff to simplify this.
Yeah.
Give preliminary approval to the workbook, and then have staff send out a modified version.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a multiple little interest novel, but things are just something.
Yeah.
Concerns with the model that Casey is reading themselves with some things, and so.
Yeah.
I don't want to put too much weight in this model that feels like it hasn't been used particularly much yet.
It's more of, so the version, the part of the model that we were looking to use is pretty good. But it's definitely the thing that is more of a conversation point for applicants, not a boom. If we're clear about that, I think no harm, but if that's not comfortable, it's not like, oh, we can be sure. No matter what you do, we're counting on them being honest about.
Yeah, and I guess I'm comfortable with that, as long as we keep it at 10. Yeah. And not, yeah, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, why don't we, I think you guys have to kind of what some of our concerns are here on this particular item. Let's move through the rest of the slides. back and maybe we can get preliminary approval with the idea, and we'll come back to this and, you know, with the meeting. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Next slide. Okay, we're down into the nitty-gritty here. Okay, this is the public vehicular access. This is the appendix H itself. The green are the changes that have happened since the DSA that we had for us. So inserted vehicular in here to make it super clear. This is what we're talking about. We're in no way loosening our grip on public access generally. It's this. This is the statute. This is what we're doing. And then also to underscore the fact that the list of examples that follow this of possible scenarios are just that, they're examples. They're not. It had read that you must have guaranteed public vehicular access, guaranteed public access in one of the following ways, which was, that's like not the right way to think about that. There could be other ways. There could be decisions from the SJC. There could be a number of things that could change. So don't need to say how they get it. We just need to know that they have it. So that's what's going on there.
That's consistent with statute.
That's absolutely consistent with statute. Everything you're gonna hear about this is consistent with statute.
Not writing the law.
We're not writing the law. Okay, next, and here, this is the slide you saw last board meeting as well, so that's why all have different colors. The new ones since that time are the green, again, getting guaranteed, put back in there to make it clear, we're not talking about something else. That specificity is really important. We're not talking about public access, like the baseline, like you can't post your land, we're talking about guaranteed public vehicular access, like the statute says we need to. And next slide. And then this, yes, that was a max pursuing rather than exhausting. Exhausting does seem like pretty high standards. How exhausted do you need to be? Okay, so pursuing seems good. So those are all that you saw last week. Aren't any new ones to this one. Next slide. And again, here, this also DSA's had a sharp eye and noticed that we had tucked them. These are all things the board may find relevant. The board isn't bound by any of these things. Board discretion is at top of everything here in this. But we had talked checking with the state agency to see how they feel about it in the middle somewhere, and probably give them a pride place and honor, put them on top. And certainly that's what the board's going to want to do anyway. Next slide.
Can you go back?
I missed one.
Go back
Yeah.
on A, does that mean to, in green, whether the sponsoring state agency supports accurate acquisition, even if guaranteed public vehicle access? Does it need to be specific to the land?
Well, it could. I mean, I think of guaranteed public vehicular access as being self-evidently to it, but yeah, maybe, I mean, that.
I mean, you clarified that earlier.
Not for everybody, yeah, exactly, but if you want to see that word is to this conserved land is not conserved.
I mean, that's a question, not necessarily.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
It only clarifies it, and yeah, I think that's a great thing, actually. I think the more it helps us stay clear about what we're talking about here. So let me,
Well, it's not opposition, I think that change.
designated state agency, I'm so sorry. Thank you. That's JC.
JC is.
That's JC. Oh, SJC, the previous report, maybe that's not what we called me, I don't know, thank you, Grace. Sorry, it's the heights of all the range.
Yeah.
And there was one other adjustment that is not here yet, where, must have been the slide back. Where we also noted that when we're saying they need to, okay, one more before that. Okay, one more before, let me see, right? No, I guess I looked it off. So it's also where we tell the applicant, you are to alert the board at the earliest opportunity. We also inserted and the sponsoring state agent. Oh, yeah. So, sorry about that. So much fun with red lines. Okay, I think that's, is that all of them, Jason? Yeah, that's all of them for the.
So you need a motion to approve.
Yes, there is actually a motion. So maybe that wasn't smart. I got through this and then I put the motions on where we talk about the money to do the workbook and the RFP all at the same time. If you would like to look that forward now, I can, but. It's
Sometimes say that.
I put the motion, so the next slide is the money, what you want to do for funding for this RFP. And I have the workbook approval on that motion on that same slide.
Well, let's take a look at it and you can figure out how to.
Sounds good. Okay, next slide, sir. Okay. These are the funding options that I thought of in advance. Obviously, there were millions of permutations. Of course, interest is accumulating because we have so much money sitting there. If all goes really well, by this time next year, we could and probably should have dispersed another $19 million. So, yeah, that's, I was in the interest before.
How much money is in there again?
25, almost $26 million, I want to say. Yeah.
We have, the question is, how much of the. Which do we want to use?
That's right. That's right. And I backed into it by thinking, okay, because I heard last time you guys talked about wanting a $3 million, maybe it was this far, but I thought there was generally like the $3 million round would be nice. And what that would take is what it would look like. And if you mean by $3 million round, 3 million to spend on projects, that's a $3,450,000 in the third set of sites. And this is what that would look like, plus the $200,000 we save. But not an interest, just in our own coffers up on the top number there. So that leaves us really skinny. There is that advantage of 100,000 a month that for now can say, okay. Option 2, if you say 3 million, which is inclusive of the set asides, then you have 2.6 million to spend on projects, and that leaves 455,000 in the interest account.
Your intent here is to signal to the conservation community how much money we're going to spend.
Yeah.
Right? But
Yeah.
at the same time, we have flexibility as a board
Yes.
to make changes to allocations.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
I need to also communicate a number to my own sort of people who handle my money.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, this much we're earmarking for this program.
Yeah.
Which can change.
Right.
But I do need a number.
Yeah.
I would be inclined so that we would be giving away $3 million plus the sets.
Got it.
Fine, but that's just to start the discussion.
I'm probably confusing apples and oranges being new to this, but what does this do for working farmland?
That's why I wanted that bug in your ear, that 5,700 acres, we need to tap that for our working farmland. We'll be looking to that 100,000 a month, which for the next few months will have. I don't know how quickly that will.
How much is in the farmland now? 70?
Right now, they need another 137.5 over this, what's in farmland, 75,000.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out how does this decision-making impact the potential to help Winslow Farm?
Definitely, and that's really the point here. That's right, that if you do option 1, you're looking at future interest being generated to help Winslow Farm and other farm projects that might need extra. That's what you're depending upon, because you won't have it in our farmland program. You have to get to interest.
Or we could allocate a certain amount to the farming project, so it's set aside.
You absolutely can.
Yeah.
You absolutely can. And I had done, I had done last time for this, I'd done some fairly complicated, like, oh, what percentage of this interest is attributable to CNR? 74%. Yeah. And that number turned out to be so close to the option 2, I didn't bother.
Yeah. So option 2 is the board, but leave money in the interest account gives us the flexibility to deal with the shortfall and funding project.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I don't know who said option 1, if you'll remember, but it seems like option 2 would be the better scenario to support the funding part.
Yeah.
Option 1, you'd be counting on ongoing interest coming into the account. I would say, I don't have it, I don't, I'm making nervous. Because you're trying really hard to spend that money now.
Is there, so there's not currently money in there enough to pay for the project?
There is not, because when Winslow Farms comes back,
Pretty risky.
we're going to, even if they took all the 75,000, we'd still be short 137.5, I think is what the number, because of the number.
Yeah, I think that's right. So they would essentially be asking the board then to allocate some interest to some of the interest into the farmland program to increase their award for Winslow
Yeah,
Farm.
So we would have that ability, right? If we have that fund, we could either allocate it to that fund now, the
Right.
working farmland fund now, say just round numbers, we're going to be allocated 150,000, so it's there, and we know it's there. That would be the way we fund that. Then it's done. Or we could just wait until, I know you mentioned option 1, or if we just chose option 2, we know we've got the flexibility, the money's there, that the project comes up again, we can then say, we're gonna allocate this from the fund and this much addition from the interest account.
And we're not bound if in May, we have another 400,000 in interest. If we had, $3.5 million worth of CNR projects come in, and we have the funding, we still allocate that money.
That is the way I would look at it. If we have, we advertise 3 million, we get a little bit more.
That's fine. They're probably a little bit.
Yeah.
We just trying to signal to the public about how much money.
When you say advertise 3 million, you're meaning option 2, we're saying total of 3 million, but 2.6 would be available for the actual transaction.
That's right.
We're targeting spending $3 but it could be less, could be more.
Right.
I guess the question would be for you, Laura, is do you want kind of that hard direction on the work farmland, have that money set aside?
That I don't have any anxiety about. If it's in interest, I don't feel the need to have that set aside. It's more that this is around, you're announcing it, that's where I think I need to tell people.
Yeah. Okay.
Protect that money.
Yeah.
It's just,
Mac, did you have your hand up?
No, I didn't, sorry.
Okay. So. I've got
Oh.
Jim Norris is giving me the peak signal.
And so I think the next slide has proposed, votes. Yes. This goes with the schedule too.
Yeah.
The whole thing, which is also in the workshop.
Yeah.
January 17th, they're due, March 21, proposals are due. And then you guys are meeting May 13th to 15th again. The same rhythm that this past year has done. And obviously that first draft motion would be modified because we're going to be a thing with the scoring. And I can't believe I didn't put how much the money would be on that motion. I believe
Yeah.
we agreed on it. Okay, yeah, thank you.
So the first one would be, can you go back to the first one would be adopt the LMF workbook as aim and materials, but it would, to give preliminary, we would preliminarily adopt the workbook pending final approval of the climate language.
As modified.
Yeah, modified climate. Yeah. And then the draft motion, the second draft motion, that we issue a 2025 request for CNR for $3 million as outlined in round 13.
And that's where, you all deciding you want to go with option 1 or 2, maybe we can tack that on.
Well, 3 million is essentially option 2.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so I move to adopt the LMS wash book after being in the board materials, additionally pending on modifications to the planning section. That's staff will modify and
Yeah.
send to the board.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a motion by Judy, second by Joey, to the preliminary adoption of the LMF workbook, pending modification of the climate language. Any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections online or in the room, motion passes. Excellent. Need a second motion.
Move to issue the 2025 request for conservation and recreation proposals as outlined in the round team workbook at the $3 million.
Motion by Judy, seconded by Roger, to issue the 2025 request for CNR proposals as outlined in the round 13 workbook for $3 million. Any objection? If no objections in the room or online, the motion passes.
Thank you so
Great.
No, thank you so much.
All right.
Right. And is the next slide, Jason, the calendar? Yes. There, I remember the draft motion there. All the commissioners have this on their schedule in some fashion.
And everybody has those dates. All board members have those dates, okay? You see any red flags on the calendar? Copy that, seeing none, okay, let's move on to staff.
What's that?
That's a Friday.
Which one?
For the youth and the calendar. Okay, good.
Okay, staff update.
All right, staff updates. First of all, I wanted to let you all know the rules are not published. Thank you. So that's all good. They're posted and published. Welcome to Joe Anderson. You got to meet Joe at the top of the hour, and farewell. Goodbye. Whatever you decide.
No, this has been a tremendous experience, not only now with this group, but, former director Meadows is there, a lot of friendships, a lot of really good things happen. Bumps in the road. But, I think public can be pretty comfortable that this organization, with all the moving parts, it's done wonderful things. So, I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jim, I wanted to, for the board chair, thank you. You've been sitting around this table for quite a while. Took a little break for a little bit. We got you back, right? I mean, but your personal knowledge of many of the properties, but also because of your past professional, you brought an expertise to the table that was needed. So, and I always enjoy your fishing stories. So,
Much as I enjoyed telling them.
I appreciate all of your time and congratulations on moving on to retirement. So, thank you. Good comment? Review, yes, yeah, absolutely.
You all know who this is?
I'm Ed Meadows, I'm a former LMF board member. And I came here today to recognize Jim Norris. But before I do that, I just want to say, wow, you accomplished a lot of work here today, very impressive. Thank you. Back to Jim Norris, I met Jim in the 1980s when I worked for Southern Islands Land. And Jim worked for the state of Maine at that time for the Bureau of Taxation. And he was known as the tree growth tax forester. And he taught a lot of us a lot about land conservation in that time. Then he moved to the IRS, and some of you may or may not know that he spent his entire career dealing with land conservation from that end of the binoculars. And so I know that Jim has had a long career doing a lot of good work in land conservation. It's been my pleasure to know him and to work with him all these years. And very consistent with Jim, he's already moved on to the next level of projects and commitments that he's making to the outdoors and the state of Maine. So thank you, Jim, for your service. It's been a pleasure.
I will buy you lunch, Jim.
That's why I came.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate it. Anything else to be brought before the board? Adjourned, be in order. So accepted. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's work today. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, aggressive. So, 2025. What is that? So we're going to something new? What's going on?
I have a lot of other.
Okay.
How you doing? Thank you.